Andrew Carnegie, one of America's richest men, the Steel Titan, once made a dare. You see, there was a slight problem going on in Andrew Carnegie's family. He had two nephews, and his two nephews refused to write their mother responses to the letters she sent while they were away at college. They would not write her. But Andrew Carnegie's deal was that he, with just one letter, could get both of them to respond. Here's how he did it. He wrote them a casual note asking them how college was doing, and then in the postscript said, P.S. I have included a $5 bill in this letter. However, he did not actually include the $5 bill. Naturally, his nephews were confused by this, and they responded, Uncle, thank you so much for your kind letter. Where's the money? As you see, Andrew Carnegie understood a basic principle of human nature. If you want humans to respond to you in a certain way, you have to make them want to. This principle is key to growing businesses. It made Andrew Carnegie one of America's richest men, and it's also key to deciding the prompt of today's question. Will SpaceX overtake OpenAI as the most valuable privately held company in the US? You see, whichever company wants to be more valuable must make people want to buy their products. So to analyze which company will, in the long run, become more valuable, we'll look at at two main points. First, we'll look at the actual background to both of these companies, their valuations, and the news going on. And then second, we'll look at what actually makes a company valuable in the long run. Starting with the background. SpaceX versus OpenAI. SpaceX shoots rockets into space, has satellites all throughout the sky that create Starlink, an internet provider for millions of people, whereas OpenAI runs ChatGPT, one of the most famous and the original famous AI engine that broke in the news and inspired millions of people to start using AI in their daily life. Morning Brew reported on October 13, 2025, the valuations of these two titans. OpenAI, it said, is now valued at $500 billion, whereas SpaceX is valued at $400 billion. These, we should step back and recognize, are enormous amounts for privately held companies, especially. Enormous. And not only that, only a month later, Forbes reported, right, on December 5, so only 2 months later, that both companies are now nearing an $800 billion valuation. It says that SpaceX is nearing this valuation because it has reusable rockets, Starlink, and may have value in terms of its long-term space capabilities. But it says both of these companies have tech foundational to their industries. OpenAI's ChatGPT began the entire frenzy around AI. It started a new generation of AI chatbots, and it sparked the curiosity of the entire world. Yahoo Finance reported on October 2, 2025, on the growth of OpenAI. OpenAI partnered with the world's largest company, NVIDIA, now worth $5 trillion. OpenAI partnered with NVIDIA to begin deploying AI infrastructure across the world together. NVIDIA promised to invest $100 billion in this project alone. So as we can see, OpenAI is also growing at an extraordinary rate, and currently is an even larger company than SpaceX, according to those valuations given by Morning Brew. So, given that both of these companies are massive, but that OpenAI is slightly bigger and has been receiving more attention recently at the head of the AI industry, this brings us to the actual question of the prompt, will SpaceX pass it? And to judge that, we have to judge what makes a company valuable. And thankfully, there's a lot of amazing books on business. One of those was written by Alex Hormozi. He wrote $100 million offers. First, let's establish that Alex Hormozi is no ordinary businessman. Alex Hormozi is under 40 years old, yet is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He's successfully scaled dozens of companies into the $1 million annual profit range. Alex Hormozi knows what he's doing. He proposes 4 criterion to judge whether or not a company will become valuable. First, does that company solve an actual problem faced by consumers? Second, do those consumers that the company, problem the company solves, actually have money to pay for their problem to be solved? Third, is it possible to find those consumers? If those consumers are only hermits in caves, your business probably isn't going to grow quickly. And finally, is that group of consumers growing? So let's analyze SpaceX versus OpenAI in all 4 of those categories to judge which is more valuable. Starting with Kane. What problem does SpaceX and OpenAI solve? Well, SpaceX solves the problem of a very difficult problem, getting rockets into space, a global internet system. These are massive problems. And these massive problems mean massive payouts for the people brilliant enough to solve them. So, SpaceX solves massive problems. OpenAI, with its ChatGPT chatbot, solves much smaller problems. It helps people be more creative in writing, or generate emails, or come up with ideas. However, then we see it deals with much smaller problems. So let's get into the second way to judge the value of a company: purchasing power. As the purchasing power of the consumers buying the product. Well, the consumers of SpaceX are massive corporations or governments, so they have very high purchasing power. Whereas OpenAI is just people buying a $8 per month subscription. Next, targetable. What is the audience actually targetable? You see, SpaceX has a much harder job with this because corporations and governments are there are much fewer large corporations and governments looking to launch rockets into space than there are people looking for an AI chatbot. But as we have already established, SpaceX can get far more money per transaction because it solves much larger problems. Finally, the 4th criterion is the consumer base growing. Well, this is an extremely interesting metric, which shows us why SpaceX, I believe, is truly a more valuable company. You see, AI is limited in its consumer pool. AI is obviously available to everyone. It's free and it's online, which means that the consumer base isn't really growing. AI is creative and it helps people be more creative, but past that, it doesn't really change anything. The reason SpaceX has so much more potential for growth is because SpaceX launches rockets into space. It can colonize, it will be foundational in colonizing new planets or the moon or in mining missions if that ever becomes a possibility. So SpaceX has far more potential for growth, also because of Starlink, which is its internet system that deploys. Starlink has thousands of satellites in the Earth's atmosphere right now, and it provides internet for 9 million people. The more satellites Starlink gets up in the sky, the better its internet coverage gets. So, given only a few years, Starlink's internet coverage could become so incredible that it provides internet for far more than just 9 million people. It could provide internet for billions. So, because SpaceX has a much more long-term vision for growth, between Starlink and its space exploration and rocket ventures in its company, then we can see that SpaceX does indeed have the advantage in the long-term conflict between SpaceX and AI in judging which company will become the most valuable privately held company in America. Whichever company wants to win, though, must remember Andrew Carnegie's core principle. If you want to make money, if you want to influence people to make the decisions, to pay you, then you must make them want to. OpenAI must make a product that people want to buy. SpaceX also must do so. And as we've seen through these 4 principles of value, SpaceX does indeed have a much better business model long-term that will cause more people to want to pay them. Andrew Carnegie's core principle.